Welcome to Day 13, Step 13, or how to buy your first rental property in Cleveland, Ohio, 2026 and 2027. So today we're talking about what happens after an offer is accepted. So again, I've talked about two tracks that you might be following. One is house needs repairs, BAR track, and the other is going through the multiple listing service and offering more full retail on a house, and that tracks. So for retail deals, you definitely don't ever want to waive the inspection. And I guess there might be some exceptions if you're really experienced and you're willing to take that risk, but generally it's just not worth it because there's not margin in there for if you make a mistake, right? So you're relying on this deal and there's not margin there. So usually better to do that inspection. It's just worth it when you're talking about a multiple six-figure investment that you're probably leveraging on, and which increases the risk. You need to offset that risk as well, right? So increase potential return by leveraging and getting a loan. But then there's that, you want to offset that risk by getting that inspection, paying a little extra, offsetting the risk, which is significant because that risk is based on that total investment, which you're only putting a small portion of money down on. It could be lost, right? So you want to not waive that inspection. You want to really pay attention to the risk inspection, not just like minimize it. I can deal with that. I can deal with that. No problem. And before you really are ending up in effect paying for a lot more and carrying a lot more expenses than what you thought when you first made that offer, which in that case, why'd you make the offer? If you might as well just offered more, right? So it's usually better to either force those repairs back on the seller or just walk away, right? There's other deals that are at full market value. Now, even in a hot market, that is true. I can promise you that is the case. Although you might not think so, this is definitely true. It's better to be patient and get a good deal than say, I finally got the deal, it's worth it just to get in. It's probably not worth it because this is a business, okay? I advise you differently if you're gonna live here. But you gotta approach this as an investment in a business. So be patient, be willing to walk away. It's either deal for you or no deal. On the cases, whether with the wholesaler or house that needs a lot more work on the MLS, you're approaching this deal and let's just say that you didn't put an inspection in. You figured for a little more work and you think that you have a nice margin in there to be able to deal with anything that does come up after the purchase. What I will say is that there is still opportunity. Usually you can still get in to do a little bit more due diligence. Maybe not a full inspection, but even if you can get somebody in to just look a little harder, think about it a little more, do some more research in general, even if there's no inspection clause. And I'm not necessarily recommending this, right? But I'll just be clear, like, if something else comes up that you didn't expect, and this has everything to do with the contract, by the way, okay? What liability and who you're dealing with. But generally, if you find something like, hey, there was a $50,000 expense I didn't expect, and really it's not in the deal. Normally what's at stake, and again, check with an attorney. I am not making any universal statement, but normally the only thing at stake is what you put as a deposit down, okay? You put a $1,500, like a lot of these wholesalers want a several $1,000 deposit down. Okay, I'm not saying you should make the deal planning to walk away, but if it is a huge issue that you find, normally you don't have the option really for a full home inspection. It's still probably worth walking away, okay? And if you can't get your deposit back, you saved a lot, right? You were planning on making a lot of money, it didn't work out that way. That's part of business risk. So you lose $1,000, you're on to the next deal. Hopefully the next one, you're in that buck and a lot more, and you get really wealthy. Right? So how I would approach the inspection segment of this. So that ends this segment. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow or module 14, day 14, about actually getting this closed, getting repaired, and getting it rented. And so looking forward to talking to you on that. And as always, if you're thinking about property management, feel free to follow the link to schedule a chat with our BDM about property management, either for a current house or the future house you're working on.